Hello everyone. In this session we'll discuss about program execution in .NET. So we're having this earlier system which consists of these blocks. We're having one language VB6. We're having non-.NET application. This block is not yet compiled or not executed. This is just the source code. So we are taking VB6. So this is basically VB6 source code. And then we want some application for this application. So we need one compiler. So we are having VB6, so we get VB6 compiler, and this compiler gives you an output which is in the form of .dll or .executable. Let's say we're having .executable here. So this .executable runs on this particular operating system. So this works very fine, no problem, because you're having your compiler, your executable, no problem in the operating system. But there is a problem in this system, this earlier version, and what is that problem? Is something like, let's say one person is there, A, and another one is B, and A is having this exe here, no problem. He can run in his operating system, no problem, because he is having a compiler and the executable. Now B needs this executable by somehow. I don't know about that, but B needs this executable. So B asks that I need this executable, and A gives this executable is in the form of, let's say he mailed this executable, only the executable he mailed to the B. Now let's assume that B is having one computer which is freshly installed operating system, doesn't have any another kind of program or nothing. Okay, so B will double click on that particular exe which he get from the A via mail. Do you think that this exe will run? Keep in mind that in his computer he doesn't have any program, no compiler, no program, nothing. He just double click on this exe. Do you think this will run? So the problem here is it will not run because it doesn't have any kind of compiler here. As I told you, it doesn't have any program, so it doesn't have any compiler. So this exe will not run. This is the problem. And you had seen this this problem. You're having C program. You compiled and executed on your operating system, it will run very fine. But when you copy this hello.c, let's say C program, to another computer which doesn't have any C compiler, it will not run. Okay, your C program, or your source code needs a compiler to get you the output. If your computer or if your system doesn't have any compiler, this program will not run. Okay, so this is the basic problem here in the earlier versions of without .NET. Basically this is the problem. So how .NET resolves this problem or this issue is, let's say I have, so he just adds some few blocks, so I'll give you those blocks. So let's say we're having one language, let's say I have C#, and then basically the block goes to .NET application. In case here it is non-.NET application, but we are specifically working on .NET application. So we're having .NET application, language C#, .NET application, and then it goes to language specific compiler. Okay, why I'm calling language specific is basically .NET supports 60 plus languages, 65 plus languages. So the language can be anything. Here it can be C, C++, J#, F#. So that's why I had taken language specific compiler. Whatever the language here, the compiler will come up here. Depends on this language. So we're having language specific compiler, and then this compiler gives you the output in the form of assembly. Okay, so let's say this assembly is in the form of .exe. Keep that in mind. Here there is one block gets added, and this is nothing but this exe is in the form of IL language. More precisely, if I write MSIL code. Okay, and then I'll tell you about this, and then this MSIL code gets to the JIT block, and then this JIT gives you the native code, and then this native code basically runs on any operating system. So this is basically the block. I didn't draw it, but just understand this first of all. So we are having one language in a very similar way. We are having VB6. we having language as a C sharp. We have a .NET application just like this, non-.NET application. We having source code here. No application, just the source code. It is not yet compiled, not executed. Okay, then it goes to the language specific compiler. Okay, so we having C sharp. So this compiler is basically C sharp compiler. So every compiler gives you an output. So we are having this .exe as in the form of output. Now think about, now I'm elaborating over here that this exe is basically in the form of IL language. IL is intermediate language. So this exe is basically Microsoft intermediate language. It is in the form of this intermediate language, and it is partially compiled code, not fully compiled code. Keep that in mind that this Microsoft intermediate language is not fully compiled code. It is partially compiled code. Now, do you think that this .exe can be run on your operating system? I mean, it is not visible, but it is somehow easy to understand that if I double click on this exe, it will run. But the inner process is that this .exe is in high level language. Your operating system doesn't understand this high level language. It needs 1010, or you can say the machine language. So we need to convert this .exe into somehow the operating system language in which operating system can understand. So we are having something called as JIT, which you had seen in your Java too. JIT is just in time compiler. Okay, this is another compiler. So we are having two compiler. One is language specific compiler, another one is JIT, that is your just in time compiler, which converts your high level language into something called as native code, or more precisely, if I say, this is machine level code. This is very near to your machine. That's why this is native, or you can say the machine code, which easily understand by any operating system. So the advantage of this complete process here is basically when you give this exe, okay, just this exe, I'm not talking about exe and compiler, I'm just saying this particular exe to any person, in our case to this B person. If I give this exe to my B person, B can easily run this application without any compiler. This is the most advantageous thing in the .NET, that doesn't need any compiler, because Microsoft itself is having Microsoft.NET built into the system. So this person doesn't need any compiler, okay, because it is completely converted this high level language into the lower level language, or you can say the machine language, that doesn't need any compiler here, and this exe can easily be executed on his computer without any compiler. So this is the advantage of .NET. So thank you for listening me.